On this Monday night, the firestorm over wildfires. Flames ripping across the U.S. West Coast, sending choking smoke north of the border.
It's something we really do not want coinciding with a viral lung infection.
As fury ignites over President Trump's inaction on climate change.
If you give a climate arsonist 4 more years in the White House, why would anyone be surprised if we have more America ablaze?
Physically distant decision day in New Brunswick.
We're definitely the canary in the coal mine.
The challenge of casting ballots in a pandemic. Plus, signs of life in the clouds of Venus. What scientists discovered and what it means. And hold still. Candid moments captured of life in lockdown.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
It is a firestorm of epic proportions, and it is still getting worse. Across America's West Coast, what hasn't already been incinerated is under threat from fires moving so fast, some people are running for their lives.
I personally had an interaction with a couple that had barely had time to get out of bed and get out of their front door and jump in the river, where they spent many hours escaping the flames.
Not everyone has been able to escape. More than 30 people are dead. Dozens of others are missing. Thousands of homes have been reduced to embers. Entire towns burned to the ground. And even where there are no fires, there is choking smoke. Good evening, and thanks for joining us. Air quality is terrible in some cities, not just close to the fires, but far away. New satellite images show it blowing from the west coast of North America all the way over to the Great Lakes. Forecast models show the smoke will keep spreading east in the coming days. And this is Vancouver today. Thick smoke made the middle of the day look dark and hazy. Visibility at the airport was just over a kilometer. Conditions were so bad today, Canada Post suspended delivery, saying the air is too unsafe for workers. And at one point today, Vancouver was again ranked as the worst city in the world for air quality. According to the Air Quality Health Index, which measures the health impacts on a scale of 1 to 10, Metro Vancouver was off the charts today. Air pollution from the fires is raising red flags along the west coast from Vancouver all the way down to Mexico. All of this is happening in the midst of a pandemic, and as kids go back to school, when access to fresh air is supposed to help keep people safe. For weeks now, daily numbers of COVID-19 have been on the rise in parts of Western Canada. Heather Yourex-West reports on how the smoke could make the COVID-19 situation even worse.
Susan Denev has been heading outdoors as much as possible over the past few months to reduce the risk of COVID-19 transmission. But breathing in smoky air wasn't part of the deal.
I can feel it in my throat, but that's about it. I can smell the smoke for sure and stuff. There's a bit of a breeze, so that keeps everything flowing.
Smoke from fires in the U.S. drifted into Alberta, Saskatchewan and Manitoba Monday, though the risk to air quality across the prairies remained low. But in much of southern BC, the smoke is so thick that anyone with health conditions is advised to limit their activities outdoors. Across the border, the city of Seattle closed its COVID-19 testing sites because of the poor air quality.
The problem is inhaling wildfire smoke can cause inflammation in your lungs, and that inflammation can make you more prone to infections like the ones caused by COVID-19.
So not only are there people perhaps with underlying conditions that this could make it worse, and then if they get COVID, things may get bad, but also people that may otherwise be a mild case might have more severe disease.
Which could lead to more people with COVID-19 being hospitalized. It could also mean more infections as people seek shelter inside.
People tend to then move indoors and try and get out of the smoke. So we are going to be driving people into those indoor environments where once again the virus is able to spread.
The BC Teachers Federation took its concern to Twitter Sunday. Teachers and students should not be in crowded classes with no ventilation or fresh air.
Yes, it is perfectly safe for people to be in the school, but we don't want the windows open. We want to reduce the amount of smoke that's coming in. But we have other things in place for COVID as well, so we need to make sure that we're adhering to those precautions.
The wildfires adding another layer of worry onto a situation with so much uncertainty on its own. Heather Yourex-West, Global News, Calgary.
California's governor, who met with President Trump today, made it clear what's stoking the fires: climate change. Something, Gavin Newsom said, has changed the plumbing of the world.
The hots are getting hotter, the dries are getting drier. When we're having heat domes, the likes of which we've never seen in our history, the hottest August ever in the history of the state, climate change is real, and that is exacerbating this.
President Trump is in stark disagreement with Newsom and other Western governors over the cause of these fires. He blames state mismanagement of the forests. As Eric Sorensen reports, nobody wants to see all this destruction, but it could force climate change onto the agenda in November's presidential election.
It's the largest wildfire in the history of California. Flames have ravaged forests in Washington state, and fire has incinerated communities in Oregon.
It's like the 7 plagues, biblical sense.
It has taken all of that to prompt a visit to the West Coast by U.S. President Donald Trump.
We have meetings with FEMA, and we have meetings with a lot of people having to do with California, Washington state, and Oregon, and I think they'll go very well. They're doing an incredible job.
But the political gulf between Trump's Washington and West Coast states could not be wider. Washington, Oregon, and California have not voted for a Republican for president since Ronald Reagan more than 30 years ago. And Trump's stance on the defining issue of climate change is flatly contradicted by 3 Democratic governors.
They deserve action against climate change.
We have not seen this level of uncontained fire ever in Oregon history.
This is a climate dam emergency. This is real.
But President Trump has dismissed climate change, rolled back environmental laws, and blamed wildfires on state mismanagement of the forests.
You know, it is about forest management. Please remember the words, very simple. Forest management.
Trump is focused on his re-election, unlikely to win over the West Coast, and as a result, unlikely to change his views.
He doesn't believe much in the science, and he clearly doesn't understand anything about climate change policy or law, that it's not that important, particularly because California is a blue state, and it's very clear that Trump is only interested in governing his supporters.
The wildfires have turned a slow-motion disaster, climate change, into an urgent issue. Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden seized the moment to declare Trump out of step with the needs of a country facing multiple crises.
If you give a climate arsonist 4 more years in the White House, why would anyone be surprised if we have more America ablaze?
Biden says he would follow the science to address climate change. The science predicts more wildfires with greater intensity over a longer season in the years ahead. Trump seems convinced his supporters will not abandon him over climate policy, perhaps calculating that on the West Coast there aren't enough of them to make a difference in November's election anyway. Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
President Trump has issued emergency declarations for the states of Louisiana and Mississippi as Hurricane Sally approaches. It's one in a series of major storms brewing along the U.S. Gulf Coast. The National Hurricane Center has issued advisories about 5 tropical cyclones over the Atlantic Basin, tying a record last set in 1971. 2 of them are now Category 2 hurricanes. Paulette is already battering Bermuda. Sally is closing in on the Florida Panhandle. Renee, Teddy, and Vicky are also spinning over ocean waters. Now to the concerning rise in cases of COVID-19 in parts of Canada. Ontario recorded its biggest daily increase since early June. Most of the cases are linked to private social gatherings. 313 new cases were reported in Ontario today. That's more than a 50% increase from the day before.
They're a cause for concern for all of us. And let me be crystal clear. Every option is on the table. We will take every step necessary, including further shutdowns.
Daily cases are up again in Quebec. 276 were reported today. Alberta saw a jump of 140. BC reported 61 new cases today. New Brunswick had just 1 new case today, and voters there have successfully completed a first. It is the first province or territory to hold an election during the pandemic. And Conservative Premier Blaine Higgs, who won a minority in 2018, is on course to a majority tonight. The polls closed not long ago, and Global News is projecting a Conservative majority. Liberal leader Kevin Vickers, who has never held public office, was hoping for a breakthrough tonight, but it's not clear whether he'll even win his seat. Here's what the early results are showing. The popular vote percentage is close, but the Progressive Conservatives are leading or elected in 27 seats, the Liberals in 17, the Green Party leading or elected in 3, and the People's Alliance in 2 seats. The Conservatives need 25 seats to form a majority. Our Ross Lord is in Fredericton tonight. Ross, Blaine Higgs took a risk calling this election, and it paid off for him.
Well, yeah, Donna, this outcome means more authority for Higgs's PCs and less influence, in fact, really no influence for the Liberals, the Green Party, and the People's Alliance. And it seems it was an outcome New Brunswickers were very eager to deliver. These voters in Fredericton lined up before their polling station opened, eager to play their part in a peculiar election.
I think it's being handled very well, and we have to do our duty. You know, yellow lines, 6 feet apart, everyone's wearing masks.
Fewer voters than usual are allowed inside, as election planners try to limit crowds and keep a lid on the novel coronavirus. Poll workers are instructed to sanitize ballot markers after each use. New measures for a new kind of election.
We're definitely the canary in the coal mine on this whole election during a pandemic. So we definitely will have some lessons learned.
The campaign included far less door knocking than usual. Some Liberal candidates went door to door. Progressive Conservative leader Blaine Higgs told his candidates to stay away,
so I could get all the information I needed about the candidates on Facebook.
Here, more than most districts, every vote counts. Fredericton North is a key battleground riding. The Liberals took it 2 years ago, but just barely. If it swings to the PCs, it could indicate a larger shift. Higgs is riding a wave of popularity from his management of the COVID-19 crisis. Political analysts say going to the polls was Higgs' attempt to strengthen his vulnerable minority government.
He saw an opportunity to score a majority government against a weak, inexperienced leader of the Liberal Party.
Liberal leader Kevin Vickers is best known as the sergeant-at-arms who helped stop a gunman on Parliament Hill in 2014. In a campaign unlike any other, this is Vickers' first attempt at running for public office.
That is Ross Lord reporting from New Brunswick, where Global News is projecting a Conservative majority government. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and his cabinet are getting their ducks in a row before the next session of Parliament. They held a cabinet retreat in Ottawa today, and the pandemic, not surprisingly, dominated the agenda. Abigail Beeman is there.
Meeting in the same room for the first time in 6 months, Cabinet is also on the same page about priorities.
The most important thing right now is to fight the pandemic.
We still have to ensure that Canadians are safe, that we make the best decisions based on the best health advice.
The government's first priority has been and will continue to be supporting people through this.
Like the rest of us, they're watching case numbers climb.
The last thing anyone wants is to go into this fall in a lockdown similar to this spring, and the way we can prevent that is by remaining vigilant.
And figuring out how to do that tops the agenda. The Prime Minister says conversations around next steps, support for childcare, housing, long-term care are happening too.
But our focus is very much on what we need to do to control COVID-19.
Cabinet heard from key players on the COVID-19 file and key foreign affairs figures, the ambassadors to the United Nations, the United States and China. Ministers are working on the throne speech too, coming next week. Global News learned plans to spend up to $100 billion in green spending were shelved, but the Environment Minister stressed climate change is still critical.
I don't think the government's backing off on anything.
The Liberals also aren't backing off a fight with the U.S. over aluminum tariffs. Tuesday morning, Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland is expected to announce details on counter-tariff measures. The government has said they'll match the U.S. dollar for dollar. That means $3.6 billion. Abigail Beeman, Global News, Ottawa.
Off the rails coming up, the cleanup in BC after a train plunges into a creek. Plus, who cut the cable on a popular tourist attraction for a second time? And a devastating fire destroys an historic pier. This 4-alarm fire ripped through an historic pier near Vancouver last night. Firefighters say the blaze at the Pier Park in New Westminster could linger for days. The pier decking has to be lifted so firefighters can access what's burning underneath. Toxic smoke from the pilings of the pier is hampering their efforts, and nearby schools and businesses have closed because of the poor air quality. The cause of the fire is under investigation. Also in BC, a CN train derailed, causing about 60 cars to pile up in a creek bed. It happened early this morning on a bridge near Hope, about 2 hours east of Vancouver. A number of cars carrying potash ended up in the water. An environmental assessment team is now at the scene. No one was hurt, and the cause of the derailment is under investigation. For the second time in just over a year, vandalism has shut down a popular BC tourist attraction. Early this morning, while the facility was closed, a cable was cut on the Sea to Sky gondola in Squamish. 30 cars went crashing to the ground. The RCMP are investigating. The cable was cut for the first time in August of last year. That cost millions of dollars to repair, and the facility had only reopened in February.
You know, I've been in the lift business my whole entire life, and these are unique and incredibly rare events. So to have it happen twice speaks more to the motivation of the person who wants to bring this team, this company, and this community to its knees, and that's not going to happen.
The investigation into last year's incident is still ongoing. Security has been beefed up since then, and this time the company says police were alerted after an automatic motion detection system went off about 4 a.m. Still ahead, the small signs of life that are a big deal on a planet that is blistering hot. There's a bold claim being made about a tiny find. It may be the closest we've come to proving we're not alone in the universe. Astronomers have discovered a potential sign of life in the clouds over Venus, Earth's closest neighbor. Scientists are trying to figure out where it came from and what it means. And as Mike Armstrong reports, it's generating a lot of excitement.
It was a discovery made almost by accident. Scientists using this radio telescope in Chile and another in Hawaii were looking for something basically to prove it wasn't there. They scanned Venus for phosphine gas to show the planet's limits. Well, it turned out not to have the limits scientists thought it had.
I was just stunned. I mean, I did this as an interesting experiment. I'd never really thought about detecting it.
What they found isn't life. It's a biosignature. It's something usually produced by something living. On Earth, phosphine gas is produced by bacteria in environments with very little oxygen. With Venus, the scientists tried to find another explanation for the phosphine, but had to rule all of them out.
Not a single process we looked at could produce phosphine in high enough quantities to explain our team's findings of phosphine in the Venus atmosphere.
Now, we've sent probes and landers to Venus before. The first one was 60 years ago this past spring. It's our closest neighbor, one planet over, just 143 million kilometers away. Well, the surface of Venus is too hot for anything to live there. It's hot enough to melt lead. But it's believed that billions of years ago, the surface was cooler and wetter and may have had life. As it warmed up, some of that life might have evolved up into the high clouds. 50 or 60 kilometers in the skies over Venus, conditions are still very rough, windy and acidic, but the pressure is similar to Earth's and the temperature's about 30 degrees Celsius. Those are conditions that could sustain life. Now, what would that life look like? Canadian astronomer Nathalie Ouellette says they'd be microbes, unlike anything we're used to.
Anything that would be life like as we know it on Earth would need to have like a protective shell of graphite or something that's protecting it from the acid.
Ouellette describes herself as cautiously very excited. Finding even some strange microbe on Venus would mean life on another planet, and that further out in the galaxy, there's likely even more. Mike Armstrong, Global News, Montreal.
Hold still. Next, a new exhibit captures history in the making. Never in modern times has the world endured what we're living through right now. A pandemic that has touched every country, that has killed more than 900,000 people. The scale is so massive, it's best captured in small moments. A new photo exhibit in London, curated by the Duchess of Cambridge and the National Portrait Gallery, showcases the perseverance, the helpers, the acts of kindness. Over 31,000 images were sent in by people across the UK. Their feelings put into context by Queen Elizabeth in her address to the nation this spring.
I hope in the years to come, everyone will be able to take pride in how they responded to this challenge. And those who come after us will say the Britons of this generation were as strong as any.
Our Europe Bureau Chief Crystal Gamansing has the story behind some of the pictures.
The images tell the collective experience of lockdown. One family, one neighborhood, one isolating flash at a time.
She was totally just in her own
world. Do you know what I mean? Like that was definitely not a posed or staged photo. And I took it and I just kind of looked at the digital screen and I was like, oh my God, this is so nice. I really love it.
So did a panel of judges, including the Duchess of Cambridge. Lottie Sophia's photo of her flatmate Pepter was selected from thousands and is now featured on the National Portrait Gallery's website. The Hold Still project was months in the making.
Together, I hope that we can build a lasting illustration of just how our country pulled together during the pandemic.
So to literally go from normality to no school, no nanny, no aunties, no cousins, no going out, it was, you know, it was a shock for the...
On International Nurses Day, Amelia's mom made her a little paper costume. She posted it to social media, and her followers right away said she had to enter it in the photo contest.
It's amazing. It's very surreal for the Down syndrome community to have Amelia represent them in such a historic event. It's just fantastic.
Amelia is an ambassador for Wouldn't Change a Thing. Her nickname is Cheeky Chops, but she was a little shy during our chat.
Amelia, like your picture? Yeah. Yeah.
Certainly, you know, we will all be looking back on this experience in 2020 and decades to come and generations to come.
It was a bit bleak, really, but at least some really good things have come out of it for quite a lot of people, it seems.
100 snapshots of history from people of different ages telling one story. Crystal Gamanson, Global News, London.
And that is Global National for this Monday. I'm Donna Friesen. We leave you tonight with some portraits of groundbreaking Canadians. Canada Post has released a series of new stamps to honor 6 physicians and medical researchers. Their work led to advancements in science and medicine around the world. The series has been in development for years and happens to launch as research into a new vaccine is in the spotlight. Thanks for watching. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.